I'm David France, and I'm the director of How to Survive a Plague.
We need our government to read this plan to save our lives.
Scientists agree with this. Why can't we have it?
We are the ones who are fighting for people's lives.
We did something remarkable.
How to Survive a Plague is the story of AIDS activism. In the very early days, researchers were not eager to look for new drugs for AIDS. The government wasn't interested in doing any of the kind of ordinary public health response that you would expect around the emergence of a new disease like this.
The problem is that the FDA is using the same process to test a nasal spray as it is to test AIDS drugs, and it's a 7 to 10 year process.
What ACT UP, the AIDS activist organization, grassroots AIDS activist organization, realized early on was that coordination was lacking, that we lacked a sense of urgency around the disease, and there was no funding. And so the activists went to the doorstep of the National Institutes of Health to make their claim that they were deserving of the kind of urgent response from the research establishment that was being denied them.
In that building down that way, Dr. Anthony Fauci is reciting the research priorities for the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. We're down here because we think we should be deciding the research priorities, because these are the people who know what's going on, because they're dealing with it every day.
The proposal that ACT UP formulated was something they called parallel track. They said, go ahead and research the drug as you would through your ordinary channels, but simultaneously create a track of access to the drugs to the people who are really sick. And ultimately, the federal government adopted this parallel track as the research methodology for AIDS drugs. And it gave access to the drugs to 15,000 people even before the drug was approved.
It was really an amazing encounter, but it sort of felt like reaching the Wizard of Oz. Like you got to the center of the whole system, and there's just this schmuck behind a curtain. There was no guiding agenda, there was no leadership, there was no global strategy for how to deal with AIDS in the U.S.
This partnership, this kind of uneasy partnership between people with AIDS and researchers for AIDS drugs, ultimately produced the breakthrough medication in 1996 that made it possible to survive the disease.
They engage in offensive and revolting conduct that has led to the proliferation of AIDS. If they would keep their mouths shut, nobody would ever say a word. We wouldn't know anything about it. But no, they march in the streets. They defy you.
To be that threatened and to not lay down, to stand up, and to fight back is just incredible.
One of the things that's really hard to remember is that at the very beginning of AIDS, that gay people had no role in civic life, that there were no known gay people, in culture. There were no actors, there were no people in the news. We as a community, we were invisible. And that's one of the things that allowed the government to take no action in the early days. If it weren't for really the groundwork that was laid by ACT UP and the AIDS activism that took to the ground to declare in the middle of this dark period that gay and lesbian people were deserving of kind of basic and fundamental rights. And really, if it weren't for the story that we see in How to Survive a Plague, we would not be able to be enjoying the full arrival of gay people to kind of contemporary culture that we have today. The Academy Award nomination was something that I hadn't even hoped for. I mean, the idea that that the film would be taken as seriously by the community of filmmakers as it has been really rewarding. But even to just have the conversation up there at that podium about AIDS. And to remind the world of that it's still a problem, that it's still an incredible disease that merits and requires activism on all of our parts would be a benefit that's beyond measure. So that's pretty terrific.